Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan Elizabeth, and today we're talking about NaNoWriMo. So, for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with NaNoWriMo, not sure why you'd be watching this video if you aren't familiar, but I'll quickly explain for you. NaNoWriMo is the National Novel Writing Month. It's where a bunch of crazy people sort of get together, band together for the month of November, and we try to write a novel in a month, like a novel with a beginning, middle, and end, all in the month of November. And it's hard, it's very difficult. You can sort of change it how you want to potentially make it a little bit easier for you if that's something you're interested in. But overall, the challenge is very difficult, but it's really fun. The whole writing community kind of just bands together during November to sort of see everyone succeed together. It's a good time. And the goal is to not just write a story at the beginning, middle, and end, because that could be really easy. Specifically, the goal is to write a novel that is 50,000 words by the end of November. To reach that goal, you have to write like 1,700 something words a day. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. And for those of you who maybe don't write a lot, that is a lot of words every single day. And you know, a lot of us are people with day jobs. We can't just dedicate all of our free time to writing. We're not writers for a living, so it's extra hard to fit that in. And I plan on doing Nano this year. I'll be student teaching though, so I'll be very busy finishing my last semester of school. I really don't think I'll be able to complete Nano this year, to be honest. I'm really not too hopeful, but I'm gonna try. And I want to talk about my progress with you guys here on YouTube throughout the month, offer you guys advice when I can, and sometimes just kinda complain. Like today we're complaining because NaNoWriMo is already off to a bad start. So, I had an idea, and I got some stuff kind of ready to go. I don't like to plan a ton out before Nano starts, but I'd gotten some stuff ready to go. I had a plot ready, a very, very, very brief plot. I didn't fill out settings and characters, but again, I kind of left all this pretty brief. I had a main character page, not fully written out, but getting there. I was compiling a little glossary of words I was using in the story. Like, I was ready. I was so ready for NaNoWriMo. Kind of. I was at least ready to start prepping for NaNoWriMo. And I hate my story now. I absolutely hate my Nano novel. Which isn't good because NaNoWriMo is in 3 or 4 days. How many days are in October? I don't actually know. It's in 3 or 4 days. And it's a problem because I don't have a lot of time to plan out a completely new novel. And I'm about to start getting busy tomorrow. I start doing teaching things tomorrow. So I'm about to be a lot busier and I'm not going to have a ton of time for novel planning and writing. So here we are. Nano's coming up and I don't have a novel. So I figured I don't know, maybe I'll decide out of nowhere, maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and be like, you know what, no, I love this novel, and I'll keep going, who knows. But as of right now, I don't have a novel, so I figured I'd kind of talk about what you can do to generate novel ideas, if you're still struggling to come up with your novel, as well as what you can do with a novel you potentially dislike, like in my case. Figured I'd give you guys a little bit of tips, while also trying to get my own stuff sorted out. Because Nano and me we're not getting off to a great start. So, the first thing I want to sort of talk to you guys about is, let's talk first about what to do with a novel that you don't like. So, if you're not like me and don't make thousands of excuses for why you dislike something, this might be a little bit easier. Because I'm struggling to pinpoint exactly what it is in my story idea that I hate. And a lot of the things I feel like I hate, I could probably fix, but I don't know, something with this story just really at like the deep core of myself is not sitting with me. So hopefully with your story, you can kind of narrow down the issues you're having a little bit more specifically than I can, because that'll help a lot. So the first thing you need to ask yourself, of course, is why you hate your story for so much, like what it is about it. For example, I do have some specific parts of my story that I don't like. I don't like a lot of the word choice I'm using. You can see the glossary here. I don't like a lot of... What I envisioned for my story was a much more mature fantasy novel, and I feel like what I have planned out so far is not. It feels very cliche and very cheesy. It feels more like a young adult middle grade novel. Maybe not middle grade, there's a lot of like killing, but like, you know what I mean? It feels very immature compared to the novel I was thinking I was writing. And sure, I could change the language. That would make the language less immature. But first of all, I can't think of better words. These placeholder words have all become very permanent additions to the story because I can't think of anything else. And something about how all of these little pieces fit together doesn't feel right to me. But so you want to figure out the specific things as much as possible about what you don't like. So I know I don't like some of the word choice, and I don't like how juvenile, I guess you could say, the story feels. And I don't necessarily, and I don't have it written out in this part of my thing because I lost some of my backups, but I didn't lose a ton. But the ending I hate, but I couldn't think of a better ending. So it just, for me, there's a lot of little things that are adding up to me disliking this novel. So you want to find your really specific thing, right? Find that thing that really sits with you incorrectly. And the first thing you want to do before you decide to scrap your whole story, and don't worry, I've gone through this process myself before deciding I need to scrap it. But the first thing you want to do is find those really specific things, and then see what happens if you fix them, if you change them. So, in my case, take out the words I don't like that feel too immature, remove all that young language that I feel like I'm using, and then just write a little bit. Set a timer on your phone for like 15 minutes maybe. Do like a little Pomodoro thing. Didn't mean to turn that on. Sorry about that. Turn on some sort of like Pomodoro technique, timer, and give yourselves like 15 minutes to just write the story from any point in the story, the beginning, middle, end, doesn't matter, from anywhere in the story, and write it with those changes in mind. So I would take out these words I don't like, and then I would write a scene in my story that would use a lot of this language and see if it sits better with me using this different language, or if it was the ending that was really, really struggling, that I felt like was really sitting incorrectly with me. Then I might choose to either write a scene from the ending with what I have in mind, and see if maybe just writing it out makes it feel better, makes it feel more correct, makes it work better. And if that doesn't fit, if it still doesn't work, then see what changes I could make to the ending. Make those changes, and then try to write a 15-minute scene with those changes and see if that's better. Because sometimes the changes that you're making don't feel better until you actually see them in the story, until you really get to feel them and use them in your story now. So try to make changes first. See if those changes stick. The next thing you can do, if you've decided that you hate your Nano novel like me, change your characters. Unless the story that you want to tell is really based and revolving around a character, then give that character a new story. But if you're more looking at your story right now and less at the characters, get rid of them. You know, like let's say I don't like Rowan, the character. then I don't need to keep him in the story. The story does not have to revolve around him. He is just a part of the story. Or, if you don't want to make completely new characters, Rowan, for example, ends up meeting another Icarus girl at some point, and she becomes kind of like a sassy sidekick. Again, the story feels very juvenile to me. But you could, instead of making Rowan the main character in this case, take one of your side characters. Take an NPC that you're barely... An NPC. Take a side character that you're barely talking about and make them the head of the story. So again, set your timer for 15 minutes and decide that old woman in the market stall that my characters talked to for a little bit and got some advice from, never mind, she's the main character of the story. What does the story look like coming from her perspective? Does that change the story completely and make it more fresh and interesting? Or does it still not work for you? And if that character, and I mean, you can take on whatever character interests you. So like if I was doing this exercise myself right now, I would probably take the sidekick character that comes up later, and I'd want to talk about her and see the story from her perspective and see what changes and see if that makes it more interesting. Or take, for example, my story right now revolves around using a magical system. So take one of your non-magical characters and tell it from their point of view. We don't always have to have a chosen one main character or someone with cool powers as the main character. So try talking about all these cool magical people from the sidekick's perspective. And that might just generally be a better story, and you might be able to continue your novel that way. Or it might show you a different side to your story that you hadn't actually realized was there. And that can become the new focal point of your story. And that can change the direction of your story to something maybe more exciting, maybe more different. And the last little bit of advice I have, if you currently hate your story, is to just go with it. Again, we're very close to NaNo. NaNo is incredibly close, like scarily close. So just because right now your story isn't working doesn't mean that it's not going to work. So you could choose to just sit with your story, make notes of the things that are annoying you about your story. Like, hang on, maybe I would create little notes for myself, novel issues. And I would just, I'd write down the things I don't like. So I'd write down these things I dislike, and I would just continue with the story, kind of ignoring these. I would just make note of them as I go, so I remember that I don't like them. But then I would write out the story like I'm currently planning it, and as I begin writing, I might find ways to tackle these issues, or I might find different ways to take the story. A lot of people don't like to be pantser writers. They like to plot their stuff out. But if you really don't like what you're planning so far, this could be a really good opportunity for you to become a by the seat of your pants writer and just wing it and see what stories the characters sort of reveal for you, what you could maybe do. And maybe just by writing the story out, you'll learn that you actually do love it. You do still have a passion for this story. And it'll get better as you go. And remember, this is only the first draft. Really, your NaNo draft is like a 0 draft. Your NaNo draft is never going to be a remarkable piece of fiction. You have the opportunity to make a bunch of edits. You can make multiple drafts. So, you can just write the story right now, taking notes of these issues as you go, and come back to it in a second draft. And in that second draft, that's when you're going to tackle those issues. You don't have to scrap your story just because you're not sold on it yet. So, if you are not like me and are deciding that you want to fix your story rather than start from scratch, those are some things you can do. And I hope those help. However, if you are more like me and you do want to scrap your current story for whatever reason, I want to give you a little bit of advice of things you could possibly do to help in that transition into finding a new story. Because getting a new creative idea 3-ish days before... There's 4 days in October, isn't there? 4 days before Nano is really, really difficult. So, I want to try to make that process a little bit easier for you guys if I can. So I want to give you guys a couple of resources that you can maybe look at. Alright, so the first resource I have for you guys to maybe check out is the writing prompt subreddit. So, I know a lot of people do like this subreddit. There's 14,000 members. Wait, that's more than 14,000. That's a lot of members, right? It's a big subreddit. It's a very big subreddit. It's very popular. However, I have some controversial opinions about it. But I think it can help you. I don't personally like the subreddit very much for actual writing prompts. I think most of these prompts are a little too silly for me. I just don't like a lot of them. They don't really feel serious, and I get that a lot of these are just little writing exercises for people, so they don't need to be serious every time. But for me personally, most of these writing prompts don't work. However, what does work for me is if you scroll down to the different tags for different types of prompts. Personally, what I really like are their image prompts. I love these. I have yet to have a story jump out at me from using these image prompts. I've had short stories come out of this, but my novel isn't really working right now. However, these are great. Let me see if it'll let me sort by top. It didn't let me do it earlier, so we'll see. Oh, it did. So let me just show you some of the examples really quickly of what some of these image prompts will look like. So this is what you get. You get a title that might give you something to go off of, and it might not. But you get a little scene, and if this scene speaks to you, it's probably going to get you a lot of ideas. So this one doesn't do much for me. But what else is there? Let's see. We've got this one. I don't know what this is yet. That's a really interesting fantasy story right there. That's very interesting. And as you start to look at the picture, you're gonna have a lot of questions. Like, what is that animal? I can't even tell. Is it like a llama, goat thing? It looks potentially like some fantasy creature. I have no idea what that is. Who's that? Why are they on this mountain with their little goat thing? Just the giant skeleton. That's interesting. The giant sword, also interesting. How did he die? How is he not discovered before? What kind of world is this where this sort of thing wouldn't have already been discovered? And this sort of thing could exist, you know? And that might get you down a really cool path of different ideas, and you might be able to get a story out of that. So I'll show you a couple more really quickly, then we'll move on to the next one. So there's that. Let me find you one more to show you really quickly. Well, that one gives you 10 images to look at. I'd click it, but it's not safe work, and I don't know what's on it, so we're not going to do that one. But I'll leave links down below. Oh, this is huge. Oh, that has a swear word. It's okay, YouTube. Now you know how to call me if any of those give you crap. So, you know, a demon guiding a very young girl in a very protective way, but you can completely ignore that and just talk more about the image itself. So that's a really cool way of potentially getting some ideas. You can also just use writing prompts in general. That's fine. I just personally, a lot of these prompts don't speak to me, but they totally might speak to you, and one of these will get you going with a story idea. So Reddit's a cool resource for potentially finding for inspiring a plot idea. Another really cool resource is the NaNoWriMo Adoption Society. Oh, so NaNoWriMo has changed a lot of their stuff recently, so let me just navigate you there. They did a really cool overhaul of their website. It looks great. So, here's NaNoWriMo. This is my dashboard. Lots of super exciting things because I'm so ready for Nano. But you'll want to go over to the community tab up here and click their forums. As I said, I'll leave links to all of these things down below. And you'll scroll past all of this. I think I already scrolled past it by accident. Yep. Whoops. Where is it? Am I blind? Yep, apparently. Again, in my defense, okay, there it is. They've changed the website a little bit. You'll want to click Adoption Society. And then you'll have tons of things you can adopt. But here's the Adopt a Plot thread. This is the thread for potentially finding... you have to scroll way up there. This is the thread for potentially finding yourself a new novel in the next 4 days. So this thread is filled with the Adoption Society plot thread always comes up every year around Nano time, all the time, to help get people ideas for Nano if they're struggling. Or if someone's preparing their Nano idea and they suddenly decide, yeah, I really don't like this story and I'm not going to use it, then they'll abandon it and potentially put it in here. So this is just a bunch of, some of them are just super, super basic ideas, just maybe a sentence, and some are fully planned out plots, like this one, that people have decided that they're not going to do. They maybe can't do it justice, something about it just doesn't work for them, they don't write in that genre, but they like the idea. And you can just scroll through this, there's tons of them, and see if any of these speak to you. And the cool thing about these is that some of them are really specific, but you don't have to use all of that specificity. I swear I'm an English major. For example, I wrote down some ideas as I was scrolling through the Adopt a Plot thread, and these two were on, actually I think all of these were on there in some fashion, but I ended up severely narrowing them down to very, very basic and generic and general ideas because I didn't like the specifics. And I don't know if I'll use either of these, but I have them now. And I recommend just going through this entire thread, get yourself some coffee, scroll down forever, look through them and see if anything speaks to you, and just write it down really quickly. Make yourself a little story ideas section of your plotting, and just write them down and potentially combine ideas. Like, these two could technically combine pretty easily, I think, if I tried. Like, maybe you can combine ideas, scratch off the ones that don't quite work, highlight ones that you really like but you need to focus in more on, and see if any of those inspire any ideas. The Adopt a Plot is great. It was last updated 3 hours ago, so keep checking back the next few days. And I hope that helps you out. Alright, and the last idea I have right now anyway for finding your novel idea right before Nano starts. Also, I just realized that I'm recording this video on Sunday. It's going up on Wednesday, so you actually have 1 day before Nano by the time this video comes out. So, if you really needed an idea really fast, again, we're going to go back to our original story idea. And this is similar to if you wanted to keep it, but to think of a new idea potentially, change it. And I mean change it a lot. Decide that, so for example, my story right now is fantasy. Maybe decide to make your story urban fantasy. Just change the genre and see what changes with it and what kind of idea can come out of that. Maybe instead of fantasy, I would make this historical fiction. Obviously, I'd have to take out the magic system for that. I'd have to take out a lot of things, but when I take out those things that wouldn't fit that genre, what kind of story am I left with? In this case, I'd be left with some sort of civil war, with an outcast main character who gets jailed and helped by another side, and I've got a civil war story right there. So take your story and just completely flip a massive component of it. Specifically the genre. Flipping the genre makes a huge difference. If you have a historical fiction story right now, what happens when you make it fantasy? To make it fantasy, something's gotta change. The history completely has to change. What fantastical elements would you add to that story to make it fit fantasy? And when you flip it to that extent, you're probably gonna find a new story out of that. And it might be something you love, and it might not be something you love. But that's a really good way of generating a potential cool story idea. So, I hope some of these tips helped you guys out. Making the video has helped me out a little bit as well in my adventure to discover a new story for Nano very, very soon. If you have any questions or suggestions for me, I'm struggling, please leave those in the comments below. If you liked the video at all, please leave a like. Also, I forgot to mention, the tool I'm currently using is called Wavemaker, and I plan on doing a separate video about Wavemaker because I really like it, and not a lot of people know it exists. But that's what I use. So if you like the video, please leave a like, and I plan on doing one Nano video at least every single week for the duration of Nano. I'm hoping to maybe do 2 a week. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how busy I get. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you want to stay up to date on my own Nano issues and my venture through Nano, I promise Nano's a lot more fun than I'm making it sound right now. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications by hitting the notification bell if you would like to. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!
So hold me in your arms, I just can't stay. It gets easier to